Soki chonam lo, chanchu badu dagni gapsu chi, dagi chonyen ki pe tsoknam ki, cholam pancha sangye jupar shok.
Sanje Chodang
Chodang
Sok
soki chonam lo, chanchu badu dagni gapsu chi, dagi
Dagi Chichen
chonyen
Jebel
ki pe
Sonam
tsoknam ki,
Dola
cholam pancha sangye jupar shok.
Sho Sanje Chodang
Chodang soki chonam lo, chanchu badu dagni gapsu chi.
Daji Chichen Jebel Sonam
Jolam
Dola
Panje Sange Jupar so
Sho Dayan Tayan Gade
Gate Gate Para Gate
Nagade
Para Sum
Parasam
Gate
Gade
Bodhi
Bodhi
Swaha
Dayan Tayan Gade
Gate Gate Para Gate
Parasam
Para Sum Gate Bodhi Swaha
Dayan Tayan Gade Gade
Gate Para Gate Para Sum Gate
Bodhi
Bodhi Swaha.
Hola, so that's some time to top Jalana Machiva, Sanjay Kumbana was a teenager to Bacha. Each of them, but Janju Sabella Tuition, Lawa, single, similar to a tradition Malawa, Jigoto, Kazuba, Takasage, Namaje, Shon, gave what up with it. Juju, gave what up with that, Juju, Shon, the internet, to be near subject.
And so we begin by setting our motivation to do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment in order to benefit all beings, knowing that to attain such a state, I must perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. To perfect those trainings, of course, I need to have a very thorough understanding of what they are. To gain that understanding, I need to be able to rely upon an unmistaken text. And with this in mind, I am here to listen to some verses from what is known as the king of mind training texts, the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, as composed by the great master Shantideva.
Hola, for what in the chat. Well, it's a Namjudon was the pushing set up. Chikita Chigusa, what they call Geshe, like to get Nagala, and Goran details of Lama Yibala, Nabatabjala, to Jechaboteva, Lama to go, which set up.
And so again, also we begin by setting up the merit field in the space in front of us, which consists of, in actual fact, our own root guru, but in the aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha, the one who is greatly compassionate, skilled in means.
Yes, and yes, and Yamshaka to the call, that number, Kula Chubu, make it to just so. What in the say, Kombasha, then the Lama to be on bote, Joe Omka, Taba Ambo, to our home, we some just set up, to go home, and Kasa, was a part of Mevaton, join us, and Kasurata, comes to get some Jatamjig, native Tanja Pachak, Chudi Jawa said that Chabana Chua Pure, and Chudi Jawa said that Chabaka. To you that they were talking about that, they don't just make shit just for some chat.
And so the figure that we are visualizing has one face and two hands, is seated in the Vajra posture with the right hand in the earth-touching mudra and the left hand in the meditative equipoise mudra, holding an alms bowl filled with nectar. Furthermore, the figure is marked by the three syllables, Om at the crown, A at the throat, and Hung at the heart center. Light rays emanate from that hung at the heart center, going out into all the directions and making offerings to all of the beings in all the six realms of existence. The merit thus is made manifest and is made as an offering to all the Buddhas of the 10 directions. And they, in that triggers a sense of bliss which combines with voidness, and they abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness.
What did it and then they got to the Chudi Jawa said that Chivakian. That Chudi Jawa said that Kusu to be in the Yambala, Lama to be Nambala, and Gentane, Rangitungina said that Lama to be on La Patimne, and Lama to be on with Ngo Yeme Joso, some subject, and Ngo Yeme Joso, Laya Lama to be on with Tukale visit to be an Ongilana Genta. Ongil Hana Chen and Tishi Shaba Tamja Tilango, Ongo to Su, she has so Atavala and only Onkur, and only Onko Latene, and Kuishik to the Chula Macheto the Nevale, and Miyu Uchedex. What is the commission?
Then all the qualities of the body, speech, and mind of all those conquerors and their children are made manifest, and they manifest in the form of the wisdom beings which come and dissolve into the central figure in the merit field. Then furthermore, light rays emanate from the central figure in the merit field, from the heart center, going out into the pure realms, inviting the empowering deities from their natural abode. And they confer the nectar of empowerment, some of which overflows at the crown, spontaneously producing the figure of Akshobhya.
어디로 공부하셔 오다 랑게 두개 나가라 세트베 라모투가 온보데 20억 것수 20억 것수 좋아서 맞아 안에 초지 겨와서다 저방에 얼마 단위 받지 어떤데 차이고 임바데 이거 워터 받지 어떤데 차
And then we have the certainty that the figure we are now visualizing is as the merit field in front is fully consecrated by the wisdom beings, and as such is the embodiment of all the qualities of enlightenment of all the Buddhas of the 10 directions.
랑게 타고도야 안에 랑라 세티 다티체 마징 semje zuebe 디가바 저 토마메가 tingi 마징 semje 탐자 마사 메고 유섬도 어디로 공부하자
And in relation to ourselves, we visualize all kind mother sentient beings all around, starting with the parents of this life, going back into the previous life, the one previous to this, the one previous to that, until we go back to beginningless time and countless rebirths, such that all of the sentient beings, without exception, are now surrounding us.
못하죠. 안에 semjenla 미베 semjen 대다단제야 라다 거꾸네 중앙에 맞 대화도 이제 되어 미도가 동해는데 동해지 가라 찍내는 이런 되겠지. 어떤데 공부하셔 안에 대다 탐제다 같이 지금 연구에 자와도 가봐 줬으나 아니 잡아도 지금 동해 이어서 되는 도택이 도스. 잡아도 지금 동해 마방을 봐도 아니 교회 동해다 동해 니디 용대지. 아니 다 잡아도 지금 동안에 아니 그다 단지 마리베 샤와도 주바 임바이나 아니 모두네 잡아도 지금 동안에 용대지 안 단지 마리베 샤와도 주발에 아니 타와지 마신 거 봐도 다 거뒤네 오늘 생일상에 대화지 용기 매바 임바데 모두 받잖아 아니 대다 라미베 아니 닝제자 아니 저랑이 두나 세다 라마투베 온보게 아니 고손투게 연대 때베고네 대바체 다외다와 이치게 되고 문제가 되고 된지 공부하셔.
So then all of the sentient beings all around us are very similar to us in wanting happiness but although they're very bereft of that happiness, and they want to avoid suffering, but they are inundated with that suffering. And so we see that the root of this suffering goes back to the pervasive sense of suffering all around us, and that this, in fact, is inducing the suffering and the suffering of change, and that we know that the pervasive suffering in turn is rooted in the ignorance of self-grasping. And so we need to be able to, in order to eradicate that pervasive suffering, then we need to oppose and uproot that ignorance of self-grasping, and thereby hopefully attain the state of liberation. And so we have this understanding now of suffering, which induces, again, the sense of care in the form of compassion towards all sentient beings, thinking how wonderful it would be if they were removed from that suffering. And that and as well as having that feeling of compassion, we also have in our focus on the Guru Buddha in the merit field a sense of pure faith, manifest faith, and the faith of conviction.
어디를 다 되는 인바인도 아니 저게 되게 심제되다 탐자 동해에 나와라 미세베 니제 고발 니제 로다 되는 인바인서 다 동해 나와들 미세베다 니제 고도 니제 고 니제 되는 용알라 심제되다 다 이왕게 잡아커 이왕 잡아고도 아니 저게 가서대 다 다시 냠제 권에 삼도다네다 아니 규제 명가 두고 권에 삼도다네다 마셰 tin데 제소 tin데 토네 삼로 당와 있는다 가자 심제 대다다 이동와 좀 마동와 있나 대다를 동에 나서는 미스베 닝지도 개토고도 와 다들 이동와데 이동와 계속을 가서 이동와 임바디 임바 워터잖아 임바디 임바 워터네 이동와 이렇게 또밖에 두바지 아니 이동와 또밖에 두 아니 대라 동에 나오는 미스바 대화를 대두고 잡아 들이 용도로 다디 정도 들이 중화 임바이나 아니 가르 용도서 지다 동에 탐자들 잡아 대화 탐자들 예측해서 학생도 용도로 다 학생 경험도 아니 봐 제가 저도 심지어 탐자들 심지어 찌개야 대화 탐자 동가 탐자 저 제투문도 와 다들 제투가 가서 라니 산재 공화 맞도는 용투문도 와 산재 공화도는 주제 감다 매번 바라니와 치다 와서도 경계 여봐자 지제 심지어 놀라 만도 와서 매도 왔다 산재 공화 맞도 참도 스 게되게 좀 거에 이마도 와시 쳐고도 왔는데 저도 아니 자주가 심 이렇게 아니 냠내지 용투고도 하고 다 자주가 심 심지어 담배 산재 공화 좀 뭐도 또 지기 상상 어떻게 고바시
So it's this sense of when we witness and when we focus on the suffering of others and finding it unbearable that they should suffer, this is the point at which we generate that sense of compassion. And following that, then we have this sense of care for their well-being, which is manifest as affectionate love. And from there, we can develop these qualities of mind through the process of the trainings in developing the mind of enlightenment, being the exchange and equalization and exchange of self and other method, or the 7 cause and effect instruction. And so we really need to get to this point of the affectionate love is very, very important in both whether we are following the equalizing and exchange of self and other method, or the 7 cause and effect instruction. And we need to, from that sense of taking kind of real kind of care of sentient beings all around us, that affectionate love, we develop then that sense of finding their suffering unbearable, and the wish to make to place them into every happiness, to really just care for their happiness and the cause of their happiness. From that, of course, arises the cause known as the special intention, the exalted intention, whereby we say, I take personal responsibility for ensuring this, for leading all sentient beings to the state of enlightenment. And of course, no sooner are the words out of our mind than we realize, I can't do this. I can't do this even for one sentient being at the moment. But I know the state of mind which has that capacity, and that is the state of enlightenment, because only from that state of Buddhahood that has one got the timing and the knowledge of the individual dispositions and permutations of karma, etc., to be able to really benefit each and every sentient being in their own specific way. And so, therefore, I reassert my desire to attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings and thereby generate that mind of enlightenment. Okay, so we try to keep that in mind.
뭐좀 타면도 대야 뉴안이도 두기 있어서 어디에 공부하시네 된대게 예배 두바디 아니 가서데 랑이 니가 가도 이게 가서 다 이게 아치를 주소 삼삼차 안 디가 셈도 샤 아니 아용도 주발래 아니 다외 진고 약하고 주소 삼삼 어디에 공부하셔.
And it's true, really intensely focusing on this intention that I will quickly attain the state of enlightenment in order to benefit sentient beings, that brings forth this seed syllable A, which at our heart center transforms into the moon disk mandala. And we pause to rejoice there that really something has been accomplished just in that, and that we have dealt a blow to our self-cherishing attitude, and that because our commitment is to, on the one hand, uh, really work to eradicate any self-cherishing, and also to really nourish a sense of cherishing of others. And so I take time out to rejoice at this point.
다 레다 저 가서 타입에 맞게 심지 탐제 안제바스에 전세시 레와나 아니 나게다 셰당다 차도도 그 용사호라 요말봐 용사마 나게다 차도다 셰당 다 아니 되게 가릴 때는 용거였으나 란체들 때는 용도와 란테 란체는 전세를 때는 용되기도 오다 되는데 셰제바스도 오다 되게 거의 용사 뭐다 야고 쉬고 중소 오늘 전에 때도 되게 저에 라시 심지 탐제 때도 되게 저 고치 투투 다 야고 쉬고 랑게 거는 고치 투투 다 야고 쉬고 중소 어디는 공부자
And so, because when we are acting against our self-cherishing attitude, and we have this sort of a completely transformed attitude to sentient beings, even in general, whereby the mind is of pride and jealousy and hatred, it cannot arise when we have this sense of care for others, wanting to cherish others and place them as most important. And so, in many ways, one can conclude that because of this, this is the moment at which my definitive happiness has begun, and that is definitely worth rejoicing in.
나게다 셰당다 차도다 렌센다 아니 딜라데네 아니 직나다 말에 경험하사래 나 평가 용사를 직나다 되게 보다 내가 차이고 다 고수다 야고 쉬고 중수 삼사 어떻게 공부시 어떻게
So all of those, negative attitudes such as anger, hatred, jealousy, pride, and competitive mind, even, and the mind of that mind which is, fear arising in case one loses something or loses out. All of that is kind of dealt a really heavy blow because we are so dedicated to the welfare of others.
어떻게 다 되네서 어다 심지 탐제도 산제 고만 다 두고바디 다 문에 전에 지금 두고에 다 랭게 장 뭐죠 온데 다 심지 탐제 산제 고만 두빈 있어 나한테 가봐도 제죄네 근데 나한테 간제도 문에 전에 지금 고바지 두투서 말해서 나이디 내당촌에 삼로 땅인데 아니 나한테 랑게 셈데 나한테 돼 랑게 루데 나한테 돼 루게 차차를 되는 나한테 돼 생기 깨진 거지 되는 거래도 빠세지도 나스는데 딱고 지금서 두전사야 그러봐 니가 요 말이야 니가 요 말. 단 많이 받아 가르다는 거서 나 라완도 맞고 받다는 거. 어다 나 라완도 맞고 봐 임바에서 다 내다든 가 매바 차오래 말이야. 나 라완도 맞고 봐서 다 때내 딱 봐도 뭐 듣고 요래. 대주도 뭐 듣고 요래. 어떻게
And so we take into account, we take on that sense of commitment and responsibility to all sentient beings. And so we have that notion of I will attain enlightenment for the benefit of all. And now it's time to really analyze that I. How is that I? And what is the status of that idea or notion or concept of I? And so we begin to search for that, to analyze within the mind and the body, looking into the different parts of the body, perhaps, to see how that sense of self manifests and then looking into the past and future moments of the mind to see how that I manifests. And so we reach that point of really analyzing in some detail, but not finding what we have looked, not finding any self-powered self or independently existent self. And so what's the conclusion then? Does that mean that the self is a non-existent? No, we don't get to that conclusion. We simply negate any self that could exist independently, and thereby conclude that all of this idea of self arises in dependence.
어디를 전 어떤 거 라완도 메도 바데 배 타체네 로다 라완도 마도 바데 라완도 마도 가서는 그 때네 중앙에도 와서 다 그네 라완도 도나 때네 중단 조다 요 말해 그 가서데 지금 내적 로다 게도 요래 무이 내서데 게도 그래 때네 중앙 이바나 라완도 중단도 요 말해 라완도 좀나 그 땡고에 매버서 때네 중앙에 쓰는데 안에 가서데 뭐 여기 내서도 개도 요래 그러와 뭐 여기 내서도 다 저래 다 때네 중앙 임바이나 라완도 두당 뭐 여기 내서도 개도 요래 근데서 라완도 마주와 있어 다 때네 중삼에서 조사면 거래 그러와 때네 중앙 임바이나 라완도 두삼에 받지 다고 저第三节의 쇠와 말에 군족의 쇠와 말에 가서 다 가서 내줘 로 뭐다 되는 지 뭐도 못 듣고 요래
And so this reaching of this position says that we negate the idea that phenomena or an idea of self could exist self-powered from its own side. And so it's simply because it can't exist self-powered that it has to exist as a dependent entity. It arises in dependence. And simply, if it did exist self-powered, then that would negate the possibility of it arising independence. And so we can see that these two positions are mutually exclusive, that because phenomena arise in this way, that is, dependently, they cannot exist self-powered or independently. So the opposite holds true. Now, this is a position that hasn't something that is invented by the Buddha or anybody else. This is a natural law. These two positions are mutually exclusive.
다 딩워트베 돈에 아니 녀바시 녀고요라 뭐유기 내수디 셰바체 셰는 워트 로다 뭐유기 내수 디임바디 임바 워트 체네 워트 체네 아니 디 뭐디 주고요래 뭐디 주고요래 들어와 딩워도 마주발라 때네 아니 뭐도 가서나 차단게 로 그래서 다도 마도 다도 주봤나 나와도 셰발라 때네 아니 차단게 로게 될라 때네 아니 코 소시제네 원남에 봐도 아니 코네 대대고 타투요 말와 타투고요 말와 타투고요 말와 와다 딩워트베 워트네 다 임바디 임바 워트 쳤네 아니 디 아니 다뭐 퇴중걸로이 때라고 되네 삼중걸로이 때라고 되네 삼중걸로이 eng여반지바테 아니 검중걸로이 게 아니 배 세도 되잖아 아니 무엇도 또 소고 요르바 어떻게
And so we begin by recognizing the reality of the situation, and we move towards realization. So, it's to understand that when we misinterpret reality and we establish it kind of like that, then we accede to the way it appears like that. And then following on from that, then we start to make judgments between us and them, using attachment and aversion, the mental afflictions. And so this continues in a loop of mistaken understanding, and that has no end to it if we maintain that reality, that status. And so we need to work systematically in order to reach the correct realization. And so we gain wisdom initially by learning, by studying, by what we hear. And then we deepen that through analysis in the wisdom that arises from contemplation. And finally, we gain realization, eventually direct realization through the wisdom that arises from meditation. So we can take this kind of triple part kind of focused approach to move from our kind of misunderstanding to the actual reality of the situation.
어디는 공부하셔졌다. 유된 저 두자마도 서로 왔다 하다 저 어디는 공부하셔. 아니 근데 예배게 로디 아니 되게 랑이 니가 거돌라 아니 가서다 다외지 뭐 약간 왔디 때도 이게 홍질을 줘서 소자 아니 홍질을 줘서 삽사자 홍도 용서 줘발래 아니 도지가 뭐 정가 홍게 참아 요것을 줘서 어디는 공부하셔.
And so it's really reaching that point where we're certain that such any phenomena, especially self, cannot exist independently, even at the atomical level. And that conviction then brings forth this mind of that in which appears the syllable hung. And that appears at the on top of the moon disk mandala at our heart center, and then that transforms into a white five-pronged vajra standing upright and marked by that syllable hung.
아니 가서도 최탐제겠다 내루 최탐제게 내루 다도데 아니 니바 니소스다 모두 줘서 오다 모두 주네 안베 뒷 남야 아니 미자와치네 랑이 니고 요소 안 오르다 자주고 셈다 돈이도 셰람니데다 같이 돈이도 셰람니데 랑이 요소 랑이 니고 요소 뒷 남야 맞자와치네 다 같이 수준이 시작이 샤마튼 거데 산제 고마 마도가 받았다 맞자와자 땐데 내서 다 야고 시고 줘서 조함해 봐 내서 어떤데 공부하셔.
And again, we can pause for the sense of celebration, and that, this is wonderful, that now I have really reached the point of quite conviction about the status of phenomena, how phenomena actually exists. And this is really powerful to have this twin mindset of the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom understanding the nature of reality. This is something I will not forget ever and maintain at my heart center. This is wonderful. So this means in whatever I find myself doing, if I'm in motion, sitting, if I'm happy, if I'm sad, whatever is occurring in life, I will maintain my mindfulness of the mind of enlightenment and this wisdom realizing emptiness at all times.
어디로 고마셔. 아니 데데 다와 도제 쟁아바데 라세 셈제 탐제 규라 다 어디듯이 요바지 콤 아니 랑게 둥게 나가라 세다 라마 투베 온거 두고래 어디듯이 요바지 콤 어디듯이.
And this combination of the moon disk mandala and the upright vajra marked by the syllable hung is repeated at the heart center of all the sentient beings all around us. And as well, it's repeated at the heart center of the Guru Buddha as our merit field in front.
근데 라마 투베 온보를 민이야 검네. 아니 라마 투베 온보를 검 아니 도메 라마 투베 온보 투가라 다와도 이제 쟁아발래 랑자 빠도 매바 중네. 랑다랑 사고도 심제 탐제게 투가이베 다와도 이제 쟁아바들 봐. 가서다 팀스 삽사절. 빠도 매바 중제는 거다 빠도 뭐 저는 뭐다 랑다 타고 심지 탐지게 두갈리가 다와도 쟁가 받아 팀네 아니 자주가 세 맞게 권는 거 돈이 또 배셔라 맞게 권는 건도 배 뭐다 야고 쉬고 좀 썼어 어디는 공부자
And so then the light rays, countless light rays emanate from the heart center of the Guru Buddha in the merit field in the form of these light rays, in the form of that moon disk mandala and the Vajra, which is marked by the syllable Hung. And these countless versions of this are spread out from the heart center of the Guru Buddha and dissolve into the Vajra and Hung and the moon disk mandala at our heart centers, myself and all other sentient beings. And again, we have this sense of euphoria that the mind of enlightenment that has not yet arisen has now arisen and grows, and that understanding of emptiness, the wisdom understanding emptiness that has not yet arisen, has arisen and grows.
어디로 공부하셔 어디로셔 아니 지금 갑자기 야 도배 생활들도 정게 있네 도배 생활되고 어다 뒤 다고도 도배 생활 공부하셔 라마 도배 오면 다가래 도배 생활 공부하셔 어디로 전에냐 거기가 도배 생활을 미치는 거다 도배 생활사 에 생활사 거기가 도발을 미 생활사 거기가 다와도 생활 되게 차상을 미치는 생활사 아니 딜레랑다 빠도 매봐 주네 아랑다라는 타고도 심지어 탐색에 나는 두 가지 위에 다와도 지장 거다 또 매청하들 마팀 삼삼체 어디를 공부하시 아니 뒤전은 토마메 디바디기도 맞아 류거나 싸와 나이거나 싸와 이거나 싸와 안데다 바차체와 감 매봐 차소 삼삼체 아니 또 매 구소도 그 유대 아니 맞게봐 관내 건도 폐 어떤 네가 개발제 쪽소 써서 또만 투표 오면 투기를 요번에 시장 주고서 돈이 또 셔. 뒤다 바다 개발매게 전에 깨트를 네가 개발제 쪽소 써. 어디를 공부하잖아. 어디를 나토는 야부여. 어디를 쳐.
And so now we can include within that then the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha, which is surrounding the upright Vajra on the moon disk at the heart center of the Guru Buddha in the space in front, as well as ourselves and myself and all the sentient beings surrounding me. And so this then can be recited. And again, as the recitation of the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha continues, then similarly, as the moon disk and Vajra emanating. Now the name mantra also emanates along with these from the Guru Buddha in the space in front and dissolves into ourselves and the name mantra at our own heart center and all sentient beings all around us. And we really feel that along with this comes this a special blessing of the qualities of the body, speech, and mind of the Guru Buddha, as well as the purification of all the negativities and obscurations that might hinder our path, be they negativities associated with our body, our speech, our mind, as well as the imprints of those negativities. They are all completely clean and purified, and that we are left with this sense of having a tremendous potential to really emulate the qualities of body, speech, and mind of the Guru Buddha in our merit field.
어디를 지금 남주도 칸도 마부시다 지마도 왜네 다딩 야와도 삼로다네 덤바콤 그러 덤바콤 아니 디카도데 쇼가 덤바콤 오다다 삼로다나네 시다 자주 쓰는 돈이 더 베셔라콤 아니 지금 가서데 산제 쳐서마 되게 토할 삼로단지로 산제 쳐도 소소 산초받다 다게就是돌아변제 산제 초버서 잠도다 생제 송도 되게 토나콤 아니 삼로도 다 미버죠 어디는 전 다가 이제 개치슈다 저기 냠는 개치슈다 자주 쓰는 돈이 더베 시럽 디간데다 또지 되고도 디간을 지금 가서 또지 팀마도 있잖아 아니 무슨 냠는 딱다 저리고 뭐도 와다디 공부시했잖아 어디는 제체
And so this is something I highly recommend that after our prayers or even within our prayers that we, really kind of cultivate this similar visualization here. We can recite our refuge and bodhicitta as we normally do, and to really then it's so important to generate this really, as much as we can, a realistic sense of the mind of enlightenment combined with the wisdom of emptiness, as and really see that all the great teachings are subsumed into these two mindsets, and to then uh, continue with this kind of visualization and meditation.
다 라마 투바 뭐 검심해가네 다 그래 다 라마 투바 공부 마도나 타면도 되는 디 토베 체도다 아니 저기 가서 토베 체도 계속 줘발라고 되는 계속 줘발라나 아니 줘봐도 그래서 냠래 지구도 아니 디체도 아니 준주고 싶은데 라마 투바 검심해가네 아니 준주고 싶은데 제시 주민이 주체 어떻게
And then to reaffirm that we have reached this point where we realize that we have got to attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. We know that to do so, I must perfect the trainings on the Bodhisattva path, all the behaviors, all the activities of a Bodhisattva. I could not have a better text than this Bodhisattva's way of life. And so really now to set my focus on listening to some verses from this very text, this King of Mind training texts now.
장주가 셈스근데 다가자 냠내지 제도나 다가 양 미지데 돈데 담바 차기로와 다 장주가 셈 용알레 닝제메나 닝제 비다고지만 장주 셈 비다고 용구면 도와 좋아다 닝제 용알레야 닝제 스근데 소소가 와심바다 셈 예보 요근절에 닝제와 데데다 강갈 용되고 대성문 닝제 스기 말와다 다 가서 베베 장주가 셈이 줄라 주고 닝제데 닝제 첨부 스근데 거와 닝제 첨부 스근데 가르치를 거서는 셈제 탐제라 셈제 탐제라다 셈제 인사배자 들리니지 닌지 유도 다투고 고도와 닌지 개투고 고도와 된데그 닌지 된데지 용하라 아니 지 셈제 강가를 이왕게 잡아지 깨마도나 용토야 코라면도 이동하지 통마도나 그럼 가르도 녀에 두고로 앞에는 어제 남주 나라쪽에 지금 소소다 지금 가서데 지금 소소다 자와 약보 요게 소소 가보여서 믿을 닌지 개투고도와 닌지 광고음도 개투고도와 가서는 소소 강사의 이동과 통고여서 딜라 강한테도 미스베 닌지 연구도와 아니 소소다 자와 약보 매게 야나 소소로 도서 뇌게게 미치게 강에 가서 테네들 닌지 개투고면도와 닌지 개마도베 강라 아니 딜라 동네 주나 아니 가와 공부도 오다 약보 시부 중상 먼저라 나다 전부 매게 나다 자와 약보 매게 미디 나를 뇌게와 다 다른 콜라 동네 주세 약보 중사 삼사전 제수이랑 게임도와 게임도 가르쳐 딜라 이왕기 이동을 잡아 게임도 근데 이마 인사 근데 닌지 천지 상황을 게임발라 이왕기 잡아 게임도 탑시면도 또 이동화서 통고다 다 심지어 술에 있는 저는 뇌기에 있는 뇌기에 심지어들 이동화 통고도 이네 나라주가 단다 탐에가 난 삼도단다 되잖아 이용을 잡아게 두고 말이야 다들 금전 갸쳐산을 삼도 마다나 저 개왕간치다 렌테다 다 갸쳐산을 삼도다네 당도 아니 그 저기 가서데 이동화 계사게 금센도와 그 금센서 삼도 마다나 이동화 계두고 말이야 계두고 말이야 당라 뇌기에 이동화 통권디 금센 띵사보자 삼도 맨에 이동화 계두고다
And so, it's a case of really understanding what makes our life meaningful, most meaningful. And so compassion has to be a very, very big part of that. And it's not just a question of a compassion that is limited to those who are close to us, or those who are nice to us, those who we get along with. And so that we need to have a great compassion, because when we talk about the causes that lead to the mind of enlightenment, the compassion that is mentioned there is great compassion. And that great compassion has to have a focus of all sentient beings without exception. And so this is what we're looking for. and that we need to have that. So to even kind of contemplate that vast, kind of all-pervasive compassion, we need to have that needs to be based on something that allows us this feeling of tremendous closeness, this kind of affectionate love towards all sentient beings. And again, it's not a question of just feeling this kind of sense of warmth towards those with whom we are already affectionate or with whom we have a good connection. That's kind of like where it naturally arises anyway. But we need to develop it again towards all sentient beings, that we have some sort of powerful investment in the welfare of all sentient beings, because without that that all-pervasive, that universal affectionate love, we cannot develop the great compassion that is a cause for the mind of enlightenment. And so it's very, very important to do that. Likewise, if we have a limited sense of affectionate love, we are going to have a kind of discriminative attitude towards sentient beings, such that, yeah, we'll have a love for those who we are affectionate towards, who we get along with, our so-called friends, etc. But those who dislike us or whom we dislike, we may, in hearing about their misfortune, rejoice. Rejoice when they suffer, rejoice when misfortune befalls them. And that's a tragic limitation. And why is it like that? Because we haven't developed that sense of a sense of affection and love for all sentient beings. And so it's kind of like the universal sense of affectionate love. The mark of having developed that is when it does not change, even when somebody harms you. In direct response to harm, you do not lose that sense of love for the harmer. And that is important. And this will not develop then, isn't it, with just our ordinary perception or ordinary the way things are going along at the moment. We have to be able to establish such a powerful universal sense of love based on a lot of valid reasoning. We must have this kind of vast view to be able to support that. And that means that sort of reasoning is established through looking into past and future lives, looking into the law of cause and effect, etc., in order to really develop something which is a solid foundation, where our sense of love for all is not perturbed by or not dependent upon how they behave towards us.
Because negative pen tota nuke de la mata which but show young and nuking the pen to sha. Show young and the pen to the madu nuking in the madu. And show young if to nuke in a nuke the pembala to a never to. Without the get show young to the some tang to bayina and it called nuking so to nuke the pepper to a jong to do. Nega nuke the pepper to jong. Show young on the sun, nuke so nuke to so the pentol to. So the summer dancina. Some dancina, pentol to nuke to show young on it. Nega the nuke my judge chicken because of the judges and the summer down to. What show young on the summer down to or then. So nuke again there, and so what they were giving seniors and some tongue to such high because show young and some town in Basa di Yoruba. Was show young on the summer town. And because so that they were doing Meduga Jima Yinza, and they were condense Yonguto, Tunga condense Yonguto, and the Judah TV Trotan the Condelisha. What the show young on the summer town, and she and call. 첩상한테 렌투고도 다 초용의 상모의 초진의 상모당 저거도나 안고 차상한테 내주 차상한테 신금은 도와 내주 차상한테 신금은 도와
So, these attitudes, these powerful minds don't arise just by, some sort of temporary set of circumstances arising. In order to bring these attitudes around, we must look into everything. We must take into account all all aspects to reach these points of view. Everything must be taken into consideration, and we must have even the kind of like reflection that should somebody harm me, what will be my response? And until you reach that point where you automatically understand that when somebody harms me, I will respond with benefit where possible. That and that benefit is explained as the fact that this harmer is a precious friend teaching me patience. And that's the reality. When we see that as the reality of the situation, then we have reached that point where, yeah, we can really talk about genuine affectionate love, genuine compassion, and develop them accordingly. And so it really is, when we furnish these kind of nascent ideas in our mind with all the reasoning, as mentioned, the past and future lives, the law of cause and effect, when we really analyze happiness and what are the kind of causes that lead to happiness, when we analyze suffering and ask what are the kind of causes that lead to suffering, and we have taking all of that into consideration, then we can establish the understanding of action and its consequences very clearly.
다 대화 문에 전에 친이 상황 유다가 대화 탈치 바지 저기도는 다 규딜에 규니바지 민두바데 아니 뭐 처음 거와 쇼용에 삼로다나 뭐다 뭐 처음 거와다 뭐 처음 거래 어다 어다 쇼용에 삼로다 마도 봐도 아니 코피다고 지 용도고 말와 어디래 다른 거라도 피다고 용 마도에 가르쳐서 쇼용에 삼로다 두고 요말 엔딜에 되는 게 많이 두고 요말이
And so when we take it all, when if we don't take everything into consideration as explained, and then we really, we will fall short of being able to establish the reasoning that really, guarantees our responses of affectionate love and compassion. And that when we do look into it all and see how it all comes together, and then we reach that level of conviction where we go, yes, yeah, this is the fully qualified path. This is the correct path I'm on. I can see how this all comes together. And when I have that sort of viewpoint, taking everything into consideration, I can see the logic behind these mindsets very clearly. But if we don't take everything into consideration, then we won't reach that level of conviction, and that's why we will fall short.
나라주고 다데 게세게 쮸베 냠네 디게데 칼레카가시 남주 나라주고 다다치 그래서 담바치에데 레라세게요데 모두 노르테게 요르바 오늘 게세게 쮸베 냠네데 오늘잖아 레라 차데요 이네 레라와 차데요 그 뭐유게 내주도 좀 저도 그 레라달라달라다 저기바 타쳐 잡아봐 딱 먼저 그 뭐유 내주도 민디바 저도 몽베 온거 저도 추베 온게 디 레라버를 통과데 레라디 데 동네테나 싸워지네 타주메와 데 템포 시부스는데 저디고 다디 칼라카가 차데요 봐 이네 딱 뭐유 내주 마시베 온게 몽베 온게 아니 그 내가 그 통나지고 온게 샤는 저도 아니 강한데 차데요 봐
And so, the kind of tragic aspect of this is that when we kind of fail to really absorb or to embrace the behaviors or the Bodhisattva activities, the activities of the children of the conquerors, as mentioned, we think we're taking some sort of easier a path, that in actual fact, it's not easier. That when we are able to embrace the behaviors and the activities of a bodhisattva fully, that is going to be easier for us because it is backed up by valid reasoning. And this is the nature of valid reasoning, is that the power of it increases exponentially, that it becomes easier and easier as we reaffirm and reaffirm and reaffirm. Whereas, the kind of like when we opt out, or we want to, do deals with the practice, as it were, and then we we actually are embracing the harder path, because again, what we have chosen is not backed up by valid reasoning. It's under the power of sort of a confused ignorance that we're choosing that, and that makes everything harder for us in the long run. So and if we want to see any evidence for that point of view, we just have to understand that look at the way we are now. We are still here. We are still kind of in this situation. We haven't proceeded. We haven't made progress.
한네 조대지 차대기로 와. 계세가 좁아서도 지금 당부 고수도 말아도 고마 매매 오게 도스 강에 용거 되네. 지금 검수나 가서데 잡된 sama 용거 또 라다 되는 고마 탐에도 배줘요 봐. 고마 탐에도 배줘요.
And so these the activities of the children of the conquerors are really what we need to embrace. And now, the difficulty that we have at the outset of these practices is only due to our lack of habituation. And as we become more habituated, and not to mention the fact that these behaviors are backed up by valid reasoning, then it stands to reason that everything becomes easier and easier.
다들 이면서 계세가 좁아로 또하게 뒤 연대 통해 수직에 전부를 또하다 연대 마게와 이나 안디 좁아라 라비가 두바디 연구 말와 어때 뒤모유네 저 시베 돈에 온 딜라 워커서 저 또하게 디 계전부를 와
And so that therefore, it's really worthwhile to find delight in these instructions and in these practices, to realize the great qualities inherent in these instructions and practices, in order to further constantly habituate ourselves to them.
말아도 답변에 지금 상에 좀 대대 다가는 시그 지금 견주 전이에 다가는 시 라마 좀 가봐래 다들 내게 기부 담바 먹고자 말아도 다들 기부 담바 산님이 잡아서 쓰고요 봐 다이네 기부 담바 차야 돼 가서 오다 자주가 써다 돈이 되면 셔라게 냠내 딜러 되는 차वर 와 디 냠내 전 차버다 되면 어디 지고 시작해 디 냠내 잡아다는 아니 디 코나 좀 뭐유기 내주 좀 캐마다 치마도 아니 가서 공부 탐에도 벤다 산제 공부 톱저로 된대로 와 어디래
And so, it's kind of like goes without saying that we have such great admiration for figures like the great beings of the past, and the Buddha, the Lama Tsongkhapa, etc., and all the great beings that have come before us. And why are they such admirable beings? Because they're the ones who really have emphasized the cultivation of the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness. They have, stuck with the reality of the situation, the actuality of the situation. And that's what makes them the great beings who they are. That's what makes them admirable. And surely, if that's the case, we should try to emulate just as they have done.
어디래 뒤면은 코나도 장주서 돈이도에 냠는 제메나 나도 나지 찍고 라디오 코나도 장주서 돈이도에 셔라 냠는 날 제메바 이나 아니 나라도 찍바래 개와 가요 말에 딱 나라도 민자와 차에데 코나도 장주서 돈이도에 셔라 냠는 나네 딘지 차바 인자 나라도 왔다 딘지 제고도 왔어 아니 마 냠는 제당 좀 마 땡고도 와
And we can't deny that, we have the same potential as those great beings had to be able to integrate the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness into every single moment of our lives. And the fact that we haven't means that we are still here and that they are the ones who we admire. And so it's kind of important that, we realize this kind of like, as it were, error of our ways, and to kind of and set the record straight that we have the capacity to be able to do this. And so let's do it.
돈바당 긴주 촌이다 제를 뭐지 코나 쪽에 데레 장주선의 돈이 되면 냠내 나면나 제 매바이나 알아서 지거래 가야 개봐요 말에 뒤 제와 인상 알아도 개봐 쇼 정도
And so, you know, that there's no difference in the kind of ability of these great beings, the Buddha, Jai Rinpoche, etc., to in what their capacity was, what their kind of like potential was. But you know, they embraced the mind of enlightenment and wisdom realizing emptiness. We didn't. And look at the difference between us. And so had they not, you know, embraced the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness, they would still be in cyclic existence like we are. But they have embraced it and they have moved beyond, and we are still in cyclic existence. And so it's kind of important for us to realize this reality, to see how this is, and therefore it makes it absolutely clear, and we should have every conviction in what path, therefore, we need to adopt from here on in.
장주가 선다 돈이 더 배셔라 요래 요 셔바길에 깨도다 나라도 길에 마게 봐도 나라도라 장주 돈이 저 배셔라고 팬토고면 도와 땅 나라도라 장주다 돈이 더 배셔라 지 팬토고고 요나 나라도 길에 장주스다 돈이 더 배셔 깨고고 도와 그라 깨고고 도와 다디 나라도 길에 장주스 돈이 더 배셔라 마게 봐이나 장주스다 돈이 더 배셔라 셔바를 요바도 먼저 팬토고면 도와 땅 어들라 팬토고다 나라도 길에 장주가 쓰다 돈이 더 배셔라 깨버지네 아니 대군에다는 And so,
you know, that, you know, of course, we have heard of the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness, but we haven't really received the benefits of that. You know, that to have those benefits, one needs to actually generate these mind states in one's own continuum, in one's own mind stream, as have, you know, the great beings of the past, etc. But, you know, we, in order to gain the benefits of both the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness, we need to start this process of cultivating these mindsets in our own mind stream.
가서 값을 배워대다 숑데 다데 가서래 리우데 다데 준주고 리우슈와 와데 다 준주로도 좋아하게고도 와데
And to understand also that, you know, as we cultivate these mind states in our own mind stream, there is cause, a constant cause for celebration, delight. And this is, of course, as we know, the essential part of the definition of enthusiastic effort, that which delights in virtue. And so this brings us to the very chapter that we're doing here, this chapter on enthusiastic effort. Shokdrang Nigya Jume Dun Niba Chawa Ngembala La Shenbala La Bangwa.
Yeah. 다 가서 어디가 좋은데 어디한테 저는 라마투베 공부 검시면은 공부하는 시제 어디다 니바 자왕에 자와 아사 니발에 로다 니바 자와 니발아 셴벨레로 방와라 방와니 자와래 가외 주네 타예베 담춘 가외 초반에 동네 주의 이행와다 고소 라주 지칠 가쳐.
And so in the text, we have arrived. Oh, sorry, we should, again, just to remind ourselves that we are in the presence of the Guru Munindra in our merit field. And we arrived at a second outline, which is the abandoning of the laziness that is a clinging to negative actions. So verse number 15 talks about this. Having rejected the supreme joy of the sacred Dharma, that is a boundless source of delight. Why am I distracted by the causes for pain? Why do I enjoy frivolous amusements and the like?
로다 천유 군도 가베 조다 지금 내가 위에다 아도 이내다 다 강갈 디기 용서게 주다 가베 주네 아예바 줘라서 타예바 주에 아예바 주에서다 용예게 아니 자와저도 그 담배 취 차대어서 로다 담배 취 로 지나네다 장주거서 돈이도 배처럼 올라서 뭐 되게 차대어라 타예바 주에서 담배 취 최신도 들어 로다 간제 제소 받쳐 졸라서 봐 교영 뭐 보시라서 다 디게라 때네 아니 내가 다 타도 가외 내가 다 타도 게 아니 디기 탐제 들라 때는 용되거와 아니 가외도 타여봐 주에 담배 최신도 주고 그래 주베 가외 주 다도 디 토나다 디기 건가 용사가 시된텔라 아니 가서다 이바이자 가와 용사 가와 탐제 용사 다 가외게 초점을 찾아서 가외 초디 아니 들라 돈나 맞아야 돼 빵제네 다 미드베 동에 용해겠다 오다 지금 가서대 로아 동에 교주베게 아니 다 둔질라 로아다 둔질라 둔질 가서 둔지다 가서 둔질라 영내서 다 둔질라 영내 아니 지금 가서 교주베게 다 가서대 다 가서대 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 롱 요바다 고급 요바도 되게들 고급 요바티 가제나다 양마제나 아니 고바소 미가벨레라 교지지 가서 고바소 미게벨레다 동해 용사게 아니 교진들 교 가르치는 가보지 교지지 가대 가와 미리 소시바 오자
And so here we're talking about the abandoning, the non-engaging in that which is supreme joy, perfect practice of the holy Dharma, that which is the cause for countless joy, limitless or boundless joys. It says now and at all times in the future. And why is this the case? That you have on the one hand done this, and then you are immersing yourself in frivolous activity, petty amusements, busyness, and distraction, the thrill of excitement, that is really non-virtuous activity. Why is it that you're doing this? It's completely improper to do this.
문에 전에 디기 되고 요바이나 아니 디다 가지고 도선 되네서 안 딜라 가사다 가와 미리 소셔봐 오자 다 가고사데 가서나 다 지금 체육 꿀의 디기 용사게 아니 담배 취 냠내 제들 가고 그랬어 딜라 가고 그랬어 어서부터 어디래
And so then again, it's a question of misunderstanding what the source of happiness is. This is not genuine happiness. Here, what we consider as genuine happiness comes from the practice of the holy Dharma, the perfect practice of the holy Dharma.
다 수바 길루베에서 레로 빵와로 숨다 길루베 레로도 빵고 요래 다도 빵다데 그래서 빵와로 좀 숨전 빵와로 숨 길루베 녀불라 빼바 담바 녀보지다 냠돌레베 수 롱레 숨바 다 배제 제반에 배나 레로 강에 장주 줍디바 오죠.
The third outline in this set is the abandoning of the laziness of apathy or despondency. And this has 3 subheadings. That is, first is an instruction on how to apply the antidote to this laziness of despondency. And the second is instructions from scripture, from the texts on how to practice this particular antidote. And thirdly, then, if we do make effort on using this antidote, then we can put a stop to laziness, and we have then the full potential to actually achieve enlightenment.
길루베 녀불라 빼바라 빼바 담바네 자와레서 기루 메다 봉조당 소랑당니 방자당 다다 현도 냠바당 안에 다다 현도 제월기시
And so the first of these, the instruction on applying the antidote to despondency, verse number 16. Without indulging in despondency, I should gather the supports for enthusiasm and earnestly take control of myself. Then, by seeing the equality between self and others, I should practice exchanging self and others.
오다 간제제 저기 나게 당님에게 개부 쪽에 어느 소소 어느 개급 시한다 어느 소소 개급 자게자 동저 정보자 숙정보 용해서도 어느 마자네 야라시베 마센트 다 지금 니마기다 니마 조당 시고요 봐 니마 조당 시도 다 가자 어딘데게 어느 야라시베 마스 딜레드네 어느 저기 생각도 뇌마도 맞잖아 어느 봐 개급 파사고요 봐다 어떤 다이마 강마자 어느 가자 어느 가자 신다 콜로 마다但是 가서 막 가서 막 잡다시도 아니 막겠다. 어디는 저 변화 개부 어서 최시관이야. 잘리 개와져봐. 소소 갑대들이 개와져봐. 개와져봐다. 로다 저 초시 돈에다 지금 가서 미게네 달 천자 개체는 자야. 야는 따가라 쉬는 천자 개는 용해. 안 라고 체가라. 야는 다 신다 콜로 가라 용해다. 천자도 주 개체는 봐. 다다 동다들 장 마장的 소소 토바 지그러다. 손내오 맞죠. 어디 시다도 배찬 숨으로 잘래 개와 잡았다. 장주 선배장 남양소 렘베세 길루 메버 고체 준주다 가자. 데데 가서돼요. 고체 준주 권요. 고체 준주 계서다. 전에 어느 소원이게 봉소 개발한다. 소름 소다 이식의 소원이게는 봉고 소원이와 드니야 개원도 어느 거 랑슈게 안 소름 되면 미 삼만남자 죽수안에 시잖아. 랑슈게 냠내 되게 비다고 용되게로 그래서 소원이 이제 봉소 봉소 어서 소관체네다. 소관체네 준주기에서 삼존이당사 전세계 삼바단 조화로다 삼바단 이제 구론주에 삼바티 냠지제 아니 조에 되는 냐수자 아니 뒤세제 전세계 뭐소 가서 가도 흘러와 아니 전바다 세세니 삼바다 조화다 아니 자 아니 전세제 로다 소소게 되가서래 전배시 세신게 잘하제네 딱 즉 문제는 저기 냠내를 두고도 모두 잘하제네서 뭐소 가우두고서 훌랑데 다니 좀 고숨 님을 온도 잡아서 소소 룽아 이웃음데네 녀모의 쳐도 마당 왔잖네 안에 디니 가서도 계획 초소 줘 온도 지그러 와서 온도 지그러 잡았다 안 디제서 원에 쳐봤다 계서 당신 냠설로 왔다 때 디제도 안에 당신 냠제가 로이 냠레도 지그러서 다 원에 쳐봤죠 다다 셔도 냠봤다 당신 냠바다 다다 현도 제와 기에서 가서 기 다다 현도 제와 기시 제보고서 보다 당신 로다 당신 냠바 아니 당신 냠바 아니 로 당신 냠바다 당신 냠바 당신 냠바다 냠바자 아니 당신 제와 당신 냠바인 로다 대화 되다 동에 메도바 냠바다 보다 어떤데는 아니 된데 이마자 아니 생기 로다 어때 데데제네 다신 제외 냠랭게 아니 네트도 맞잖아 버티지고래 수고해서 다들 셔도 제와 기시 제와 왔죠
And so here the image in the explanation of the kind of four, it's like tactics really of war in ancient times when one chieftain or king of a particular area was going to war with another. These would consider the kind of martial tactics to be able to deploy their forces for defense, or archers and the charioteers and infantry and so on, in sense of being able to overcome the enemy, surround the enemy. And so we're looking at this example as overcoming the enemy of our despondency in this particular case. And it's like having that. And the bodhisattvas consider this kind of imagery to overcome the despondency overcome the laziness of despondency by armoring themselves with armor-like enthusiasm and the collections of merit and wisdom, of really collecting kind of this fuel for their practice, so that they can greet the situation through intention and through action, and likewise employ mindfulness and alertness. Mindfulness to keep their focus on the job in hand, and alertness to alert them to any deviation from that focus. And that in that way, they can really fully commit themselves to controlling the situation by applying the antidote. And that means they have that joy, really, or that certainty of control over their body, speech, and mind, and how they're going to respond in any given situation to win that situation, and employing these aspects of enthusiastic effort in order to be able to bring this off. And this is largely the practice here that's pointed to is the practice of equalizing an exchange of self and others. First of all, to really equalize ourselves with the other, seeing how we both want happiness and we don't want suffering. We're equal in our rights in order to have that. And then to engage in the exchanging of self and others, and our self-interest is changed for the self-interest of the other, etc.
Oda kanje je rangi lunga yusum de ta kanje je nyomo de xiangwang do manda je nyomo ge ta lu ta ro ta ko so lu ko ne ina ta nga ko ne de yi ko ne ina ta de ta de nyomo ge xiangwang do juba ju de ne ka so de ta kanje je ka so de Geshe ge dembe ge xiangwang do mada we dembe so ani xie xian ge jara chen de zhugu do zhumu do de ani an zhuwa de dema ta do ani di nyembu sune an di jedo madang wa chene ani chika so chubi chodo ruwa chubi chola ani kasa de tsu ka gyu wa jetu wa jezi sungu yorba wa de chen takan che chiga yangla shi ge maa jaba na shi chene chala maa jaba na shi chene nga ki jebo so yangla shi kwa na maa chene ani gane tuisho chogudo ani tuisho chosa tala ani ko kage kwa na tuisho chogudo wati chene yangla shi wa maa kwa na ani pika pamba chigo yoba yinto di nang da chene ani rangi kaso da ta nyomo chola choda mongcho te ani kaso da ta kancha cha dendege ani kaso da ta kancha cha chwa ni ke pung chwa che chene ani Geshe ge sung chene ta kancha nyomo choda mongcho jara che chene ta chiga nyamle pi tabo xiong la ani pebong chigo res ruwa chigo res wate li shata tuanda dute.
So what's being emphasized here is this kind of like approach as one king would in war to put forward the best tactics in order to guarantee success. And so here, our enthusiastic effort is looking after the actions of body, speech, and mind, so that they do not in any way engage in mental affliction, and that this is guaranteed through our application of mindfulness and alertness. Again, a mindfulness to initiate a focus on where our mind should be, and alertness to engage in the checking process so that we don't deviate from our motivation. And then from that controlled position, we can apply the antidote to the situation, even the potential of a situation, and make sure that our intention, our motivation is followed through in its action, and so that it's on the side of Dharma, on the Dharma thinking. And so it's kind of an important process. And that's the kind of sequence of events that it begins with that inquiry into whether my thinking is connected to or infected by mental affliction or not. And that's an important aspect as well. The second of the subheadings, again, was to do with the application of the antidote and some advice from texts on how to do that perfectly. Verse number 17 states, I should never indulge in despondency by entertaining such thoughts as, how shall I ever awaken? For the Tathagatas who speak what is true have uttered this truth.
산제 도발라 아니 계전 장면 숨라 계전 장면 도말 아노 지금 소동와라 소바 자고나 다제 된다 미뉴바를 사다 네 된다 톱사 말스 미뉴베 조베 장조 칼라 톱제 shum네 길과 미자데스.
And so here it's a situation where we have heard about the kind of extent to which the practitioner must go to in order to attain the state of enlightenment over 3 countless great eons, wherein one has to dedicate even one's own life, and so here we're saying, no, I'm not able to do that. And so it's kind of like really saying here that we must avoid or overcome such despondency if we're going to attain the state of enlightenment, the full enlightenment, and not be downhearted.
장마당 장부당 샤장 또 주바 대다장 라나메베 장주도 상자와 주로시 송베나 다 미주바 다 아서 미주에 베나 지제 조베 장주 미토데 녀바 토바 주로시 바오죠.
And so the reason why this is stated is that it comes from the Tathagatas, those gone to bliss, the Buddhas have stated, and which is true, in Sutra. And here it's saying that if such beings like a lion or a tiger or a dog or a wolf or a vulture or a crane or a crow or a sheep, a worm, an ant, a bee, a fly, any insect, if they can attain the peerless state of enlightenment, then in my case, having been born as a human being, if I make the effort, why can't I also attain such a state? Of course I can. And therefore I reaffirm that I can do this, yes.
라메 장주 토베 요레스 바나다로 토베게 튕기제 그래서 다 토베게 사변 잡으데 다 톱두에게 사변 잡도 산제 릭스데 샘제 탐제 줄어 요르바 디숨 요르바다 다데 고급제 중화이나 톱두고레스 고급제 중화이나 톱두 가서 산제 릭디 요바 인자 톱두고레스 미바 토바 줄어 셔바 와다我的真他感觉这个我真的他真的一般人他的米绿点点的今年三这个点把的钱他也真的看见这图马的是吧他真正点这个顾客就啥吧伊呢아니 그 제도에 누가 산제의 릭스도 여바인자 디용투요 아니 나다래 미류된요 디나네 대적을 류된 산제의 때마다 제도 와다 얘기 좀나 두마도 저 가리요레스 어떻게 공부하시고 요새 어떻게
And so all these animals and beings are listed as being able to attain the state of enlightenment because they contain the seed, as referred to as Buddha nature, in their mind system. And that when the opportunity arises, they, of course, can also proceed along the path and attain full and complete enlightenment. And that here it's saying, listen, if that's the case, here's you having been born as a human being. Not only that, you've got a precious human rebirth. You've met the Dharma. who's to say that you can't attain the state of enlightenment also? Of course you can. You've got every kind of conducive condition on your side.
그래. 내가들 라므림다 주나를 쏜 것도 와. 단단데 년손에 가서 미르데 네가들 된적을 리된래래 아니 단단 가서 된적을 리된래만에 산제 공부 토에다 산제 공부 토에 레라그랬어. 년손에 된적을 리된래바 미르데 디네 된적을 리된래발래 아니 미르된 토에 산제 공부 토바데 레라그랬어.
Also, it states in the graduated path teachings that it is easier to move from a precious human rebirth to the state of full enlightenment than it is to get from the lower realms to the state of a precious human rebirth.
레라그서 다 레르 왔다 된적을 리된 레발라 지금 가서 주리 남바다에 시zo 제조 빠져 좋아져 물론 디마메바 참자와 지도 년송 때라 주도에다 가보시라와 다 산제가 공부 좀 쓰는데 아니 장주거서 돈이도에 셔라 제조 빠져 주고 냠래 되게 제거도 미르들라 다 냠설라마도는 가발랑도 그래 와 튕게 상 깨게다 대화 차대도 와
So here, when we look into the causes that are necessary to accumulate, to lead to a precious human rebirth, such as a perfect ethical conduct, the practice of the six perfections, such as generosity, etc., and making stainless aspirational prayers directed specifically at a precious human rebirth. To bring all that together is quite difficult to imagine. But having attained a precious human rebirth, it talks about generating the mind of enlightenment, the wisdom realizing emptiness, and applying this through the six perfections. And that the question is, as a human being, if we can't do it as a human being, when can we do it? We are in the best position as a human being to perfect these practices in order to attain enlightenment.
다 개치도 저 주단 신고도 저 주단 신바이나 아니 거 주마도 매든 주단 마시바이나 아니 소소소 샘로 돈에 가고 싶어서 왔다 좀 두고 말해서 가고 싶어서 저도 거 주마도 같이 차대기로 와.
And so, of course, what it relies on is knowing how to apply the Dharma, isn't it? If we know that, then we're really kind of like in a very strong position. However, if we don't know how to apply the Dharma, and then we're left on, up to our own devices, and then it's kind of quite difficult.
그래서 그 주단 신바이나 김난내내 타바유 송고도와 그는 말바다볼 배적이도와 그러 줍신바이나 김난내바이나 타바다 탐색해봐 좀 두고 그랬어.
So it's kind of like, and so it's saying if one understands how to actually practice the Dharma, then even a householder, as said, can attain that state of enlightenment. For example, Marpa.
좀 돼줘라. 다가 마주바 있는다. 그저 민가리케네 펜토고 말와. 어디 가서 갑자기 짜고서데 란첸젤라 갑자기 짜고도. 갑자기 짜고도 단지 머리 벌어. 단지 머리 보다 란첸젤라 갑자기 짜도 와이나. 아니 가봐 되네. 그 추뚝 투에지래도 와. 추뚝 세인데 란첸젤 단지 머리 벌어 갑자기 짜고도 짜고도 따야래도 와. 추뚝에게 민케네 란첸데 단지 마리발에 잡결전에 치바이나 코초코라 요야 말와 민가르타나 마다나.
And so, of course, you can see how, therefore, this is nothing to do with reputation, what kind of name somebody has. But if one is opposing the self-cherishing attitude, if one is working on and opposing the ignorance of grasping a true existence of a self-entity, then one is engaged in spiritual practice, in Dharma. And it doesn't matter who you are, that is the case. But if one has got this massive reputation, but is not doing that job, not working assiduously to oppose self-cherishing, and not working really dedicatedly to eradicating the ignorance grasping at the true self, and then a true self-existence of an entity, self-entity, then it doesn't matter what reputation they have, they're not engaging in spiritual practice.
아니 민이네 라 지금 라마 민이네 다 림보칭의 민이 여반다 다 게시의 민이 여반 가리 민이 여반나 란첸제다 다지 마리바게 드로첸의 저거도나 고쳐봐 말해 란첸제다 다지 마리바니라 카데잔의 저거 얘나 민가리 여반이네 고쳐봐 차대하래 라 최기 민이 연하다 만나다
And so it doesn't matter if whether one is called Lama or Rinpoche or Geshe, if they are not engaged in these two practices, if opposing these two attitudes, then they can't be called a practitioner. And if anybody is engaged in opposing self-cherishing and the ignorance grasping at the true existence of a self, then they are a practitioner regardless of what sort of reputation or name they have.
장 티수를 못 챙겨 장 티수를 못 챙겨 티수를 못 챙겨 간데 티바 버사셔도 간데 티바들 장 티수를 못 챙겨 잡지 링을 못 챙겨 예 간데 티바티 공부 송거렸어 간데 티바 차네 똑바 사와께 개면도 다스 간데 티바 가 간데 티바 일라 간데 티바 차서나 가서 릴라이제이션 그게 영향 못 줬어 소소히 냠내 제마도나 소소히 냠내 제마도나 아니 그 지금 가서도 치칼을 대화장에 그 영화 그게 민도스 뭐다 소소 냠내 자와 그 치칼을 마대바 있네 그 냠내 레디기로 와다 레디기로 와 뭐다 간자 간디 티바 찬데 똑바사바게 그게 민도다스 가서 똑바스인데 소소 냠내 전에 간디 티바 인고 그게 민도스 뭐 여러 와다 가와 있네 소소 냠내 녀몰을 갑대제 냠내 제투바 있나 그 똑바디 게임으로 와
And so, again, is referring to one of the previous Ganden Tripas who stated that, that realization doesn't come with the position of Ganden Tripa. Don't assume that I have some kind of realization. Realization arises through to one's own practice and endeavor. It's not bestowed on one because of gaining some sort of high status.
거지 펜을 잡아쟁이서 남자 잡아쟁이는 녀모 매버 줘요 말와 녀모 매버 줘요 말와 그 녀모 쓰서 카페잖아 매버 속으로
And so kind of like one doesn't become free of mental affliction on attaining the robes of a monk or anything else. That requires that one is engaged in assiduous opposition to those mental afflictions.
녀마한테와 다람살한테와 지게들의 용을 지게용 아니 지게용 다다 용도 용거라면 안되든 가셔다 지금 저 먹보자도 안 간사서는 그 가셔리 다 계속으로 들어가서 그 자제 공부도 와 자제 여러 봐 자파 자제 그 아니 간사서는 그 자제 그 너무 매워 차이가요 말와야 안 간사 자제 그 타마들 용도 But now I give you your shadow. I need to.
So again, is referring to this this kind of like how to say tradition, perhaps you'd call it, of Westerners in Dharamsala, that some will actually occasionally buy robes and wear robes as if they had been ordained or something, and go around like that. Smoking.
진짜 자제 관다 남자 지금 가서 다 조아시 태두고 등고구나 조대가요 말았어 소소냐면 맞죠.
So again, as if just by wearing the robes that one was free of all negative behaviors after that.
다가 녀모를 갑대 짜마도는 그 행무도 왔다 가자 최주주스의 녀모를 갑대 짜야지 다 녀모를 갑대 걸을 짜고도 아니 녀모는 중부 시우지가 걸을 연구도 당부 용단의 신고도 걸을 전에 연구도 안디 하고베터는 탑케베터는 아니 랑그랑 냠뇨를 밥에 아니 갑대 짜고도
So we really have to oppose mental affliction, and this must be something that is very firm attitude of ours that this is the case, because as we have known, it's like the whole job of Dharma is built around opposing mental affliction, and that here we must understand what we're up against, because these are the attitudes that have kind of embedded themselves in our mind, in our consciousness. They're extremely sly, extremely smart. They get behind our kind of really facile and shallow reasoning to take over our minds. And so one must develop a strength and a skillfulness in the application of reasoning to be able to put a stop to mental affliction, to overcome again and again and again and again and again.
야 랑게 냠뇨로 빠베 지다미 그 중천문나로 송여를 갑대 자단데 송여를 이내야 아니 소소소가 얀딜레 배전전 아니 소소 냠뇨 건데스네 레라 용구도 좋아 소소소가 야 냠뇨고 때네 오다 아니 데가 지금 제 개발 거고도 탑시 개발 거고도
And so, it's kind of very, very important to rely on our own experience in this regard. And that, of course, the practices and the great examples are laid out in the great texts of how to go about opposing mental afflictions. But I think it's easier if one is able to really be honest in one's own experience, that when such a situation arises, how is it for me? What works best in my reasoning to be able to avoid this this afflictive kind of thinking, and therefore not allow it to become an action and so on. And that it's very, very important to rely on our own experience.
나기 기부다 봐서 양 소소소소라 아니 지금 녀몽라 아니 빠지 가서 파소 경원데 소소소 지금 파조데 지금 미네시 삼을당 유버서 아니 이제 가서래 갑대 짜네 깨제시네 야 이제서 녀몽라 갑대 짜다 주고도 소소다 소소 냠냠 미다와 용어 되고 열봐 리지가 인터체는 당에 캐나를 고갑대보다 다다보다 캐랑이 상황도 침바다 니마 데르는 게 캐랑 고갑대기면다 선생님 그 지금 란젠제다 다지 마리바니데 갑자기 짜다데 아니 거기 야 코란 파저 미소로 니유바 서로 제제네 안 찌라 갑자기 짜네 거 인데제 조다제 용거도 와안 탑지 근데 야사래
And so, there are many different ways of dealing with afflictive thinking, as there is afflictive thinking. And so it's kind of like really to become really, I say, familiar with so many different ways to be able to do it. One excellent kind of practice is to actually even personalize the mental affliction, and to kind of like have this sort of conversational, argument with mental affliction, to say, look, I can see what you're up to, but today I'm not giving you the opportunity to get into my mind and to afflict my thinking. And so you have this sort of, saying that using a whole variety of techniques and skillful means and practices to deal with the particular mental afflictive thinking as it occurs.
배다 란젠젠다 란젠젠다 안 셴젠젠이 차잖아 아니 셴젠젠다 란젠젠이게 아니 지가서래 지금 카페 짜네 아니 저기 셴젠젠을 잡조지야 란젠젠라 아니 가서 누가 슈충다 당해라 거기 미민다와 니유베 소로 제제 지다 소소 삼로를 끼고 요다데 니유베 소소잖아 아니 거기 소소 삼로데 아니 셴젠젠 콜라파 좀자 삼로다 딜레 잡조 제전 란젠젠을 국가 마테체 안 다지 마릭 바다 다음에 또 베샤라레레 와다 디나 신제를 삼로 당제네 와다 디나 신 삼로 당네 아니 다지 마릭 바티 슈촌다 당예 주고라 디나 신 삼로 당제는 다 몽고 마리베 샹와도 주테바티 다 지가서데 주바텔라네 가서데 디 샹와도 마다에 탑시제 와다 가제 저거 삼로 민다잖아 나라도 감다 투바잖아 근데 근데 저는 펜차도 right 어디에 삼다 요청 어디에 참
And so, it's very, very good even to set up a debate between the self-cherishing attitude on the one side and the cherishing of other attitude on the other side. and really, listen to both sides of the debate, and put forward the different reasoning and thinking, in order to come up with, a very solid basis for making sure that one chooses the mind which cherishes others. And similarly, with the mind, which is, the ignorance of grasping at self-entity, as opposed to the wisdom realizing selflessness, and to set that up as a debate as well, and to kind of come down on the side of wisdom. Very, very good practices to kind of integrate into one's practice. And we kind of leave it there for today. And so to bring our minds to focus on the figure of the Guru Buddha in the space in front, in the merit field. To think about the fact of in cyclic existence, how we never get beyond suffering, and particularly pervasive suffering. And from that, the attitude of wishing to attain definite emergence from this reality brings forth that sense of renunciation. And then from that thinking, then the mind of the syllable bam arises, representative of renunciation, and that at our heart center, on our head, transforms into the lotus mandala seat. And that how all inner and outer phenomena lack any objective existence, even at the atomical level, and arriving that mere negation of the object of negation brings forth that syllable hung, representative of the wisdom realizing emptiness, and that transforms into the the sun disk on top of the moon disk mandala.
That's some 탐제도 산제 고만요 이거 마다 토바지기 삼삼 공바시 안디 이게 아직 아요스 다위게 뭐냐 가지고 삼나체.
Sorry, I should have said that on the sun disk mandala is on the lotus mandala seat at the crown, and then reflecting on that, affirming the lack of any objective existence allows us to understand that phenomena arise in dependence on the basis of cause and effect and so on. And so therefore, the aspiration to attain the state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings is validated. And that mind of enlightenment is symbolized by the moon, a syllable a, which transforms into the moon mandala seat. And so then we make the invocation verse thrice, O glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, the figure moves from the merit field in front. At the end of the second, has arrived at the pre-prepared seat on my crown. And at the end of the third, we have that certainty that the Buddha will remain there until we attain the state of enlightenment. And that's really worth rejoicing in. Then we offer the 7 limbs of practice and mandala offering.
어디서 되네 양종 연종 공부시 되네 연종 공부선다 지 감성 좋아를 가봐게 와는 동네에 메다면서 아니 딜레 타와지 맞잖아 지금은 또 상 예와죠 연종 공부시 아니 되네 연종 예별로데 이게 가서도 밤질을 줘서 니가 니디 이게 밤질을 줘서 밤 용서 줘발래 아니 밤마다 맞아 봐질 줘서 삼사자 어 심지어 탐제 어제 지난 거 좋건데 저 유된 저 두상이 말 커다 줘 공부시 아니 뒤 예배 로데 아니 이거 혼지 혼 요소 줘발래 님의 경우 약간 같이 줘서 심지어 탐제에도 산제 고마도 타면도 토바지기 서대 요원이 토바지기 공부시 아니 된대게 예배 뜸바디 된대게 예배 뜸바디 아니 그 이게 아치래죠 아요소에 다의 경우 약간 같이 줘서 서로 공부시
Then we begin the process of establishing a suitable seating arrangement at our heart center, again by reflecting on renunciation, bringing forth that sense of that syllable bam, which transforms into the lotus mandala seat at our heart. And then how all inner and outer phenomena lack any objective existence and are merely imputed, gaining conviction in that position brings forth the syllable hung, which transforms into the sun mandala seat on top of the lotus. And then how we can really fervently address the aspiration to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, the mind of enlightenment, which is symbolized by the syllable ah, which transforms into the moon mandala seat at our heart center.
어디지 아니 바데자 라마를 못 쳤다기 ninga 페메데 가지고 구수 두죠 못 쳤어 선대전 담배 가서 배 예배 가서 쇼 수배 때도 산제 공부마도 제 소소 선서 공부자 되네 랑이 ningi 페마다 담아져도 카인데 주는 남주 ningi 다니 제가 도저 가고 상과 제가 제 카제 뒤에 타고 또 매청아 다에다 어머니는 마음에서 르바송 거데 되네 지도 자면서 어머 알아보자 나디디디디 스코라게 되네 텐데게 송어 오버 예다마 해도 버마다 마샤마나 예소 텐데 르바송 거데 텐데 공부시
And then we again utter the invocation verse thrice. So, glorious and precious root guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed there at my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, the figure moves down through the central channel, through the crown chakra down through the central channel. At the end of the second, they have arrived at our pre-prepared seat, and at the end of the third, we have that again certainty, that joyous certainty that the Buddha will remain until we attain the state of enlightenment. That is worth rejoicing in, as the leaves of the petal fold over and are sealed at their tips by a white five-pronged vajra. And the package is surrounded by the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha in a clockwise direction, and the mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent origination in a clockwise direction.
아니 랑게 닝게 위해서 라마 두베 온거 네바디 아니 고송토레 왜서 빠도 메버터 랑게 지원에 간디 봐도 류 타저 류치나 타저 왜기 탐네 아니 지금 도마메만 디바데 디바체다 쳐봐도야 다간제제 미게 주고 수준다 겨와라 수베다 안다가 제베 하나 라신 하나 마도베다 네바 근데 싸나 체제 생각만 디인가마 또 메와서베 아니 네바디가 봐 자체 다소 삼사 어디는 공부시 되네 소소다베 도마도 거 잔주스면 라와다가 상하게 단세다가 파다말라 마고 팀을로 도와서마 좀 꾸조소를 내지바 담배 쉐보가 법에 준대로 꾸어도 심절을 내벨라지바 도나 토레 답에 저수지바 예동거 소와 지치바 단자 바 장제 다주 다바 중소 삼사 어떤데 공부시 아니 다음에 최주베 개개 루게 나자 생그 동네 중식 코만이 와자 롱 틸레 교회 때다 단자 마 장제 다바 중소 삼사 아니 하도도 다가자 뉴도 산제 고마 토발라 탐에가 나시 교현 치치데 탐에 나시 교현 탐제 단 가나 타자 다과는 잡아지 차도가 야고시 중소 서고바자.
And then from within, light rays begin to emanate from the Guru Buddha at our heart center, permeating through our entire body-mind continuum into every cell of the body, affecting a complete purification of all obscuration and negativity that we have accumulated since beginningless time, including the 10 non-virtuous actions of all naturally occurring negativities and all actions proscribed by the Buddha. all infractions and downfalls connected with the Pratimoksha vows, the Bodhisattva vows, or the Tantric vows, all the negativities that we have accumulated in this life, in the previous life, and the one previous to that, and going back to beginningless time, all actions of disrespect from to our parents up to our gurus, negativities such as abandoning the Dharma, disparaging the Dharma, all negativities associated with mental illness, sickness, disease that can be very adverse to practicing the Dharma, and mental disease, similarly, that can make it difficult to engage in the Dharma. All those negativities are completely purified. And then we have the imbalances to our elements of the body and the channels or winds and the drops, that they are realigned and rebalanced. And in particular, that which acts as a major impediment to our quickly being able to attain the state of enlightenment, namely ordinary appearance, that this is dispelled for a pure appearance.
언데는 소소 신도터 롱의 년년차 라마샤자생 고대 렌제 증견천 소소르의 라마샤자생 고르 조소 삼사자 소소 신도터 섬의 년년차 라마샤자생 투데 렌제 증견천 소소 섬의 라마샤자생 투라 조소 랑겔 롱아이소 라마샤자 구종 동고 예매 조소 삼사대 대화자 대외 동바데 대동니스메 이시 계소 삼사자 오다 오드레자다스 계소 삼사 랑겔 내사 내대 라마샤자생 다베시도 조소 삼사 다 와서 라마샤자생 구조동고 예매 교한테 나라라 심에 고마셔 대 두갈래 라마샤자생 빠도 매버 투네 아니 심제 그다 감속에 심제 탐제라 아니 배 라마샤자생 차상화를 쇼발라 때네 대다 탐제야 라마샤자생 구조동고 예매 교수 대다가 내서 내대다 내고 견다자 라마샤자생 다베션도 교수서 다 심제 탐제 산제가 살아 거기 있어 니마 데린 코도 소나 가고 다 야고 시고 총소 어디에서 가고 다 심제던자 산제가 살아고마 뒤에도 수제 개와 가지고 조금 소도자와 유대는 좀 두상 요가 말이었어 뒤 어느 대화제 대외 동바제 대동지스만 이시켜서 선서 고마자.
And then through the combination of my own more subtle wind acting as the substantial cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of a Buddha. And then through the combination of my own most subtle consciousness acting as the substantial cause, together with the consciousness of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha. And now my own body, speech, and mind becomes inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of an enlightened being. I'll rejoice. This produces a sense of bliss which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. The place that I am in is also purified of any fault or degeneration, is transformed into the palatial abode of an enlightened being. And then seeing myself as inseparable, body, speech, and mind from an enlightened being, also seeing myself as lacking any inherent existence. I send out light rays equal in number to all the sentient beings and all the realms of existence. And upon dissolving into them, they spontaneously arise as fully enlightened Buddhas. The place that they are in also is clarified or cleared of all fault, and becomes the palatial abode of enlightened beings. I rejoice at this point, having really today achieved the main goal of leading all sentient beings to that state of enlightenment. How wonderful. I see this leading of all sentient beings to the state of enlightenment, the virtue that which has facilitated that, and myself as the agent of that virtue, as completely lacking in any objective existence. This contemplation produces a sense of bliss which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness.
어디다 다다 데다 뭐가 이제부터 문에 된다 레라고 좀 말봐 이나야 다다 삼로 땅안에 신체는 문에 보라 아니 데다 요 교리 좋아쇼 교리 좋아쇼 어떤데 어째 다 간자 저기 Tende 용알라 심제 탐제도 산제 고바 통고도 산제 고바 토발라 자주고서 돈이도 싫어 답게 치고 다 tende 임바 인사 다 랑게 그 기부주나 두부주나 사나 토나 존나 다 가제 저게 아니 경과 차바 있네 타마 씨바 있네 되게 그가 아니 저기 자주서 돈이도 싫어 기회 아니 튕겨도 주 개견도 저거 용화 지기 자체도 같이 집에 줄이 좋아서 소다 고바시
And of course, we're operating at the level of aspiration and imagination here. These sorts of realizations and achievements are not achieved so easily. However, in my dedication, I really fervently dedicate that whatever virtue I have attained here is dedicated to make this happen as quickly as possible, to make all of this manifest as quickly as possible. I know that in order to bring that about, I need to perfect my practice of the mind of enlightenment together with the wisdom realizing emptiness, and to really embed that in my thinking so that in every situation, whatever I am feeling, and whatever the situation is, whether it's a positive or negative, whether I'm moving or sitting still, whether I'm well or ill, whether I'm old or even at the point of death, that I do not abandon this application of this kind of thinking, of really doing everything and seeing everything as in a conducive condition for strengthening the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness.
야와디 예뇨돈다
La
라마 산예조뇨 노와 제자바 예바 예야살라고 와라이쇼 단조세
Suksen
오제
Ke
마게만
Panam Ke
요로이 야바냥
Yam Pa Me Pa Yang Gong Me Gong War Shung Ni Da War Rim Ma Ke Panam Ke Yam Pa Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Pa War Shung Rawe Kowe Jin Kam De Pen Dan Dang De Ne Chen Ren Jin Jin Ge Su Yi Sha Pe Si Te Ba Du Ken Gyo Jin Mei Te Wei Pe Chen Chen Zi Ri Me Kem Pe Wang Po Jam Po Yang Gong Chen Ken Pe Su Chen Song Da Pa Lo Song Dai Pe Shab Lo So De Ni Gen Se Wei Te Chen Chen Zi Ri Me Kem Pe Wang Po Jam Po Yang Gong Chen Ken Pe Su Chen Song Cha Pa Lo Sang Dai Pe Shab Lo So De Mi Gen Se Wei Te Chen Chen Zi Ri Me Kem Pe Wang Dong Bo Jam Dong Ken Pe Du Ken Dong Ga Lo Sang Dai Pe You are Avalokiteshvara, a great treasure of compassion, not aimed at true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception, Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, Losang Drakpa, at your feet I make requests.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Take care.
Take care, everybody.